Saturday. My name is Mark. I make paintings in Krita. Today I'm going to be making this reference photo here in the top left into a nice beautiful painting. Um, we're starting off with an orange canvas that'll complement the nice blue sky nicely. As we go along, I'll begin to add in reds and greens to capture the look of this valley floor. So let's dive right in. The first thing that I want to do is take a very bright titanium white as well as a knife that'll flow very nicely. These are the Mt brushes from Krita. And the first thing I'm going to do is block in the white clouds that are in the top part of the image. So I'm going to take a very large brush size and I'm just going to block in loosely, larger than that even. Like, there we go. And I'm just going to loosely block in where I think these clouds should live. And again, I'm going to focus on, for now, on the tops of the clouds. I'm just blocking in. These are also clouds, so I'm not really concerned about how detailed they are. I just want to get the general feeling and fluff of a cloud. We're going to block in some more colors here in a minute as we get further back and further away to kind of accentuate the fact that these clouds have a little bit of depth to them by adding in a little bit of color. And in a moment, what you're going to see me do is blend on the canvas until I have something that is really much more captivating and full. And again, I'm just really kind of moving very fast with the brush. I am not focusing on what the clouds actually look like. I'm not trying to actively draw a cloud. I am just making shapes on the canvas. And I'm just moving along. As we go through, I'm also going to add in blues. And as we come back and blend this, the blues will mix with the white to create that beautiful bright blue sky that you see in the image. At the top of the image, I'm also going to put in some darker blues because the top of the sky is a bit darker than that of the lower section. So I'm just going to take those corners and block them in like so. I am going to take a layered approach to this, but I'm going to try to use the minimum amount of layers possible as I go through and block this. And what I really want to do is create opportunity for me to seem like there's layers that have been added without actually creating them digitally. And that will add a greater depth of feel than if I had just done it using the layers. Keeping going through. Again, the beauty of these impasto brushes, Mt brushes, is that they are going to leave texture. So as you can kind of see here, we already have some texture on there. Now, as I go through and blend this, I'm going to again jack the brush size up to something like that. And I'm just going to go through and use circular motion as I blend these together. And as I do so, we will start to get a much more vibrant mixture of color versus the very flat tones. You can see, you can kind of already see it beginning to mix and beginning to create more variety in the way that the sky appears. That's still a bit too small. And the direction that I choose to blend is going to impact which color becomes dominant, which hue, which shade becomes dominant. And I want to try to do that in the same direction so that we get a nice, even look. And sometimes I'll vary to make it look a little bit different. But really I want to make sure that we're blending this in a way that's giving character to the image and giving a little bit of meat for your eyes to chew on. In this painting, we really want the eye to be drawn downward into the valley and not upward into the sky. Because the hero of this painting is that magnificent valley. which is Crawford Notch in New Hampshire. And again, as I do this, I'm really not trying to create any shapes or forms. I'm just trying to be very loose and free. Um, the reason why the canvas is orange here, so that's a color that will complement the blues of the sky very nicely. And as I go ahead and blend this, it creates the the color we're looking for in terms of the sky blue. And again, just trying to be very loose and quick with my brush strokes, and really trying to be very active with them to create things that are of subtle interest to the eye, but not intense interest. Just something that the eye doesn't perceive the sky as one homogeneous thing. Because when you look up at the real world sky, you don't really perceive it as such. You perceive it as all the little things that are in it. And again, just painting away and blending. Blending requires a ton of patience, and I am really just going to take my time with this part of it because it really is so fundamental to establish the overall character of the painting. I'm going to kind of try to preserve this darker corner because again that'll help cap the eye and keep the eye within the image because it'll add a little bit of weight to that top corner and help to press the viewer down into the clouds and then further into the mountains below, the valley below. Okay, just circular motions in there and out. I'm also not afraid to work the same areas of the image over and over again. That's okay. Nothing here is written in stone, and nothing here is, especially at this kind of early stage, nothing here is so pristine that I want to preserve every element of it. I'm just trying to create a sky that has some character in it, and that has a nice blending of deep, rich blues that'll really kind of let the eye have a little appetizer before you look into the lower corner of the image. Or if your eye moved the other way, to have a little bit of dessert as your eye moves up from the valley below. You can kind of see already how we've gone from something that was just blocked out shapes to something that is now having very rich character just by blending and mixing on canvas. In the digital art world, it's hard to take. You can't just squeeze some paint out of a tube, mix it in together, add in some more black, add in some more white to get the color you want. Instead, you kind of have to um, mix on canvas or use the color wheel, which is off screen here, to choose the right color you're looking for. I have found that my preferred method is to work off a preset canvas or a preset color palette, and then to use that and then mix it on then mix the colors on canvas. To me, that combined with these brushes creates a much more rich image. that doesn't look flat and preserves the appearance of brushstrokes and the complexity of a real world painting. I find that a lot of digital art to be very flat and very obviously digital. And it's really my goal to make my art such that it doesn't have that same kind of flatness to it. So now, as we get in closer to these clouds, I'm going to shift from this blue area that we're overworking now into the white area. And what I'm going to begin doing is lift the clouds up, just like that. Literally fluffing them up like so. And pulling them up. And then I'm just going to kind of work around them as well. Again, it's okay if these colors get very mixed and muddy. That's okay. Nothing here is set for that final image, and it's more important that I focus on having the color come through. You can see how it's kind of more orange here than I probably want it to be. So as I go through and paint this, I'll probably block in some more white later on to help it have more of that fluffy appeal to it. And as I kind of work through it and pull the clouds up, it's getting more of that kind of the feel that I want. But I don't want to work it too much because I still want the cloud to feel wispy. So I think I will be adding in more paint at some point here to help alleviate that orange look to it. And again, pulling up. And imagining where I want the cloud shape to be. Kind of rounding it down as I do. Again, pulling up. Now as I go through here, I kind of want the eye to not be able to tell where the one cloud begins and where the other one does. And I want the eye to play a little bit of guessing game. I'm also trying to spread out some of this much lighter blue so that inhabits that sky as well. I'm also going to add in some more color at some point to help highlight where the light's coming from here, because that'll also be a critical part of this image, because you can see a lot of light brightly shining off these clouds. So again, to get that color spread more evenly, what I'm going to do is just pull from the top of the clouds in that same circular motion and spread that brighter color out. And all this is doing is adding in more white to the blue that we had previously mixed on canvas. another real key aspect here is that as I'm going through and painting, I'm really trying to make sure that I'm not leaving any obvious or clear boundaries. I want there to be a wistfulness to this so that the clouds themselves don't have a clearly defined or easy to see boundary and instead are made up of a much more um, ambiguous area. Because when you look at a cloud with your own eye, it's fun to pretend what it is, and you literally can't tell. So that's kind of the look and feel that I'm going with here. I may also simply cut this cloud back and paint over this again in a minute to get the look and feel of the cloud that I want. Um, and this, what I'm doing now, will help to form more of a backdrop for later on, because I really want to try to eliminate this more orangey feel to it. Again, I want to complement the orange. I don't want to be overtly orange. You can see how wonderfully things can change simply by mixing paint on the canvas and how easy it is to just have the appearance of wonderful detail in a sky without really having to do much work. We've been at this for 17 minutes, and already a pretty captivating sky is beginning to take shape. Again, just painting and mixing through and making sure this brighter, lighter sky blue is able to spread. Another thing that I want to make sure is not very obvious are my brush strokes. To a certain degree, I do want there to be an obvious appearance of brush strokes, but at the same point in time, I want to make sure that I am also um, not creating something that is distracting from the overall image. Like, I want the texture to guide your eye. I don't want it to be something that's overpowering or forcing your eye in a certain direction. So I am also trying to go through as I blend and remove some of the deeper scratches and the deeper um, areas of depth. Because again, I want this to have a very light feel, and sometimes those very obvious and very heavy brush strokes will add weight there that I don't want. Again, just keep working this through. I'm going to keep continuously blending to kind of draw up this color deeper in and draw in a way that is having that blend a little more evenly. As we get lower in, it's going to progressively shift from more white to more blue based on the colors that we have blocked in below. It's going to continue to mix on the canvas. At this point, it's very important to not think of these as shapes and forms or get overly in love with anything. At this point in time, I am more focused on just the overall color that I'm achieving. I'm also trying to be very careful with the amount of pressure that I'm using, because that will also impact how heavy my strokes are and how much ridges the brushes apply. The gentler I am as I blend, the less these ridges and bumps will appear. Cool, we are moving along here. And again, just kind of trying to spread the color out in a way that's even. I'm just trying to have the beginning of a sky form. And then once we have this base color, I'll reapply those cloud shapes that I had in the beginning. And I'll begin to work them in and mix them with the blue underneath rather than the orange underneath. And that'll get rid of that very orangey color that we had up here before. It'll have something else to grab onto. And again, I'm just trying to do my best to create something that has character to it, and trying my best to be mindful of the overall appearance of the image that I'm creating, and the overall um, composition of the image. Sorry, I completely lost the word there. Because I want the composition of the image to really have that weight to it and really pull you down into the valley. So I might also change the positioning of those clouds to help cap the image and to help point you down and to help point the viewer down. One thing of note as well is that I'm not trying to one-to-one recreate the image. I'm simply trying to use the image to help guide my composition and to help guide the inspiration for the painting. I'm not necessarily trying to create something that's an exact replica or something that is photorealistic. I'm a huge Bob Ross fan. I love watching his shows as a kid. They really helped me, even today, because they really help me relax and unwind and kind of give me some ideas or really encourage, you know, a positive mindset and a joyful approach to painting. Um, Bob's images tend to be very almost photogenic, and that's not quite my style. And I am trying to carry more of an impressionistic style rather than Bob's style, which is much more romantic. And romantic in the sense that it is a much more trying to capture the overall um, accuracy of natural beauty, whereas I'm more interested in capturing the emotion, and I'm more interested in capturing how a particular place or image made me feel, and I'm trying to use the brush strokes to create that. So you will see a much more heavy style from me, where I will be layering things on, hopefully in a way that's much thicker than than you would see in a romantic painting or Hudson River School or Bob Ross, whichever one you want to choose. My favorite artist probably is Thomas Cola from the Hudson River School. His paintings on the Fall of Empire are fantastic. I think they're still visible in the Met as well in New York. So those are some of my favorite landscape paintings. And but again, it's very photorealistic, and I'm really trying to capture and create something that is more expressive, and that is where I'm more free to feel as if I can express myself, rather than being held to an image where I may be judgmental of myself, or where I may be compelled to think I'm not doing a good job because I'm not following the image, or because my tree's not very good, things like that. I'm trying to avoid those kind of thoughts by letting myself be a little more expressive in terms of my brushstrokes, and I'm letting myself be more expressive in terms of the overall look and feel of the painting, as well as more expressive in terms of the way that I feel as I'm painting. And I'm also going to try to fill most of this canvas here. At least down to where I am now. Maybe a little bit further than this, because this is roughly where I'm painting now is likely a little bit higher than where the valley's top will be. And I'm mostly going to be working in this bottom part of the image. And just scratching through and really creating something that is much more expressive and detailed. And I'm trying to go as low as I possibly can in the center here, because that is where the sky will have the most range. And just kind of mixing through. And basically, I'm going to need to have blue here to grab onto, because those back layers of the ridge lines that are at the southern end of the White Mountains are going to need to be light colored, and they're going to need to be a mixture of green and this blue color. Because if you look in the image, the mountains that are very far away almost have the same color as the sky. And as I add in green to the image, I'm going to want to mix that green with the blue backdrop of the sky. As I get closer in, I'll be shifting that to more of a red color underneath, which will then drive the nearer two mountains that are forming the notch into the forefront, into the foreground. Cool. So a little more blending just to remove some of these heavier strokes, and to flatten this out somewhat. And so one thing you can kind of see here is, without really thinking about it, I've created a pretty cool pattern. Because I have now this kind of cloud that's moving in this direction, where it's elevated from left to right. And I'm probably going to try to follow that as I add in more clouds, or add in a layer of clouds on top of this. I just want to push this down a little bit further. A little bit further. Good. And again, lightly taking out some of these heavier spots and just cleaning the canvas, if you will. I want this to be very light. almost, and you really want to get the impression of floating as you look at this part of the image. I've also kind of created these lines that angle up in this direction, so I may try to think of ways that I can accentuate that. I think Bob would call those streakers. He would paint them on differently, but that's basically what they are. Those add a little bit of texture and striation to clouds to kind of add that wider depth of feel. So again, back to my original brush, back to a very bright white color, and I'm going to begin to make some decisions. So in the image, I have clouds that are very horizontal, so they run kind of like this. I want to try to follow the shape that I've already created, so I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to paint in that circular upward motion. Following the shape that I've already created. And here, I am not really blocking so much. I am actually letting the wet brush blend with the blue underneath, and I'm varying my pressure to create these kind of much more intricate, fluffy shapes in our cloud. And I'm going to kind of get this down very close to the horizon and very close to the orange shape that we had there. Now I'm adding a bit of a darker shade of white as I move through and begin to have this fluffy shape. And I kind of want to have the impression that maybe there's a storm rolling in, right? And I want that kind of feel to be present in the overall image. Where I want the very bright spot to be on top, and I want the darker shades to be underneath. And again, trying to draw in a fluffy upward motion as I fill in this area. I'm going back to that wider shade. Changing my direction a little bit, and just go ahead and making these kind of like fluffy shapes and blending with the wet brush. By wet brush, I simply mean that there is color in the brush that I'm using, whereas the other brush I was using before used the color that was on the canvas without applying anything new. Cool. Now that is fully blocked in, and what I'm going to do is go back to that blender brush and really again move in upward motion and try to follow the same shapes and just kind of go through and add to the fluffiness of it, while also making sure that we're kind of blending in to the shape that we created before in that first layer. Notice how too that I'm still on the first layer, and I have not moved off to create a second layer for the clouds because I want this to mix. I really want this to feel like it's one homogeneous thing. And I really want to feel like it's a cloud or a storm rolling in, and I want it to have that same kind of fluffy appeal to it, so that as you look at it, you don't have to waste, your brain doesn't waste any time on it. it immediately is drawn to it, knows what it is, and is perfectly content with the idea that this is a cloud and that maybe there's a storm coming in, or at the very least that there is sun and light from coming in from behind the cloud. Again, just trying to make this more consistent. I'll probably go through this a couple different times, adding and taking color, as we go through, and as the cloud really takes shape. And again, keeping that circular motion and just constantly pulling down, or either pulling down or pushing up, depending on the direction that I want to go with the paint. And I will try to not use additional layers unless I really want to make sure that I'm almost creating a safe point for myself, or if I want to do something like change the opacity of a layer, as if I'm applying a glaze. And you'll see me do that a little bit as I add light onto the shape of this cloud. And I'm basically going to say that this arch here is where the bright spot of the painting is going to be, which is kind of very similar to the image as a whole. So it's going to ride up here. And again, trying to blend up and fluff as I need to. And by adding in and mixing in the different shades of white, I'm creating depth in the cloud. And I'm creating a little bit of feel as if the cloud has some character, trying to make it less flat and trying to make it really have the depth and feel of something you may, of one you would see with your naked eye. Again, just taking my time blending. I'm going to add in more layers here as we go through. And by layers there, I simply mean more paint. And as I add on added paint, it'll kind of work into the depth that I want. I want the paint to add depth, not the layers of Krita. Very light, just kind of wispy through, and blending down. And blending down. And just constantly pulling these down and pulling these into that fluffy shape. And then blending it further down. And And down here, I'm trying to let the orange come back in just a little bit. I'm trying to create a different shade for our valley to grab onto. I don't really want to grab onto the hard white. I kind of want to grab onto a bluish color. I think the color that I'm making here on the canvas is excellent for that. Okay, this is coming along nice. Again, really coming along nicely. Really having a lot of character to it, a lot of depth to it. Without really having to go too crazy in terms of what we're doing, or in terms of how I'm making the actual sky come to life. Again, very light pressure and very quick brush strokes. I'm trying to let the center be brighter than the outside. And I'm just going to start pulling this down as such. Just so it doesn't terminate quite so quickly. And that'll give me something to kind of go back and work over. And already I can see my eye beginning to kind of play tricks on me as I'm making this. And I'm beginning to see shapes that forming that I haven't actually created. At least not created with intent. And as I do so, I'm trying to preserve those areas, because those are the areas that you will likely be drawn to as well. Like this little guy right here. Cool. We are moving along nicely. And again, I am just painting away here and trying to have this color come down as much as I possibly can. And you can see I'm kind of almost filling the image with this already. Cool. So I'm just going to take my brush now. I'm going to move much more horizontally and just change the striation of my brush strokes to tell me this is roughly where I want my horizon line to be, which is very low. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to create our next layer. Once my thing catches up, well, I am going to go back that layer, and I'm going to just even out some of those striations I just created because they're ugly. You can kind of see how rapidly, as a painter, the is that goods take over. And I really want to try to not empower that part of me, but that's okay. And we're able to just move on and do what you saw, and then paint. And nothing can be everything can be cleaned. Everything can be made better. And everything can be the genesis of something good, even the saddest or darkest thing. So it's okay to have an oopsie. It's okay to fail because that's how we learn to get back up. As I wear a Batman T-shirt, of course. Cool. So back on the second layer, what I'm going to do is lower this down to 69% on the opacity. Nice. I'm going to take, I think this is cad yellow. I'm going to take a standard brush of smaller size and bigger than that. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is just, number one, I'm going to lock the layer below. I'm just going to begin adding on this bright yellow color here. I'm going to also let it follow some of these striations here. And I'm going to let it follow here and there. And now, what I'm going to do is just blend this color out. And notice how what it's doing there is it's making the sky brighter. It's creating those bright points, and it's almost looking like they are distant clouds. And it's also enhancing that striation that I had a moment ago. And really what I'm trying to do here is over time I am trying to learn my painting. And I'm trying to let the painting teach me or tell me where it wants me to apply certain colors, where it wants me to add certain complexity, and where it wants me to make things darker or brighter. Also, notice how it's not mixing with the blue below. It's just augmenting it and enhancing it. Because I have that blue layer locked. If I were to unlock that, it would begin mixing with the blue color below. And I kind of just want it to rest on top, like so. And as of right now, I'm just trying to be very attentive to the direction of my brush strokes and to really try to make this lighter. And again, remove any kind of obvious blending to it and really make it very homogeneous. And I will likely add some white into this as well to really make that brightness pop. For now, I really just want to have this mix some interest to the sky without having to make it be something that is overly distracting or dominant. Now what I'm doing is starting from an area where that yellow color isn't, and I'm moving it to an area where it is, and that'll help me to eliminate some of the more obvious yellow hue to this. I really want it to be a bright spot rather than a more obvious yellow appearance. Okay, again, doing that again. Hopefully you won't hear my stomach growl like that. And this is really, this area here really has the effect that I want, whereas over here, it's just a bit too strong still. And all that means I have to mix in more blue. In fact, let's go ahead and add some. Remember, every point of light needs shadow, and in our case, this blue is our shadow. And because of the fact that we can't mix on a color palette, it means we have to mix on the canvas. And to create that kind of color complexity of mixed paint, you really have to do that on the canvas. And again, I'm just trying to make this look subtle yet brighter, and focusing on the streakers that are really in the ultra background of the painting. And the main thing that I want them to stand out for is their brightness. They are reflecting light back toward the viewer. The other thing that I can do, which I probably will to make it seem less yellow, is increase the, well, really decrease the opacity, and to let the blue below it shine through more. But for now, so it's easier to see, I am just going to keep blending as such. Cool, so now onto the cloud. Again, what I'm going to try to do is fluff this in a way and pull it up. Again, we want this to have a bright magnitude to the image as a whole. Cool. Now, watch how this changes as I play with the opacity slider. And notice how now we have a much finer um, appearance of brightness in this section of the image. Now, I think I am ready to begin to get into the meat and potatoes of this image. And I'm going to make an odd choice. And this odd choice might be very bad. This could be a very poor decision, but we're going to find out together. And what I'm going to do is just take my grainy grooves brush, and I am going to begin to paint in some mountainy shapes all along here, like so. Really letting them do that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blender brush, and I'm just going to move like this. And I want you to kind of understand that I want your eye to understand that these are mountains, without really being able to find or see the exact shapes of them. And I'm probably going to spread this red color pretty widely throughout the image, or at least this lower third of the image. Because again, this is going to be my base that forms the contrast or negative to the greens of my mountain valley. And what I'm going to do is just block things on top of this. So this is kind of telling me where I'm going. In the image, you can kind of see that we have this central peak in the middle now. And what I'm going to do is add different shades of green and color to that to give it the appearance that I want. Because this red will have the color that complements the green nicely and will help draw it out. Cool. So now I'm going to choose, I think I'm going to choose just our normal phthalo green, again, groovy brush, and I'm just going to try to draw this in on some of the lighter areas and introduce this green color along the same shapes. And then I'm going to blend it. And here I'm beginning to just try to pay attention to the basic general contours that we have, and I'm not really trying to give too much detail. I am trying to kind of make it seem as if some of these are in front of the others, or etc. But I'm trying to make it look like one ridge line. I may also add in a more aquamarine blue in a minute as well to help pick up some of that blue of the sky. Actually, what I'll do is I'll mix in some gray. Again, I kind of want this to be both dull and light in color so that it can be set further back in the image. I don't want you to be too super drawn to this. I want this to be and to seem as if it's very distant. And I want it to be very unclear as to where this ridge line actually is. I'll lock the cloud layer so I stop mixing in that white color. And now I'm just going to blend it out until it is much lighter. And again, we are blending on the canvas. And just kind of moving this shape lower and lower into the image. Again, I don't want there to be any clear contours here. I just want this kind of flat grayish color that we've created to be the backdrop. And I'm going to do this one more time before we begin to work on the notch itself. It is very important that I spread this down because it does give other colors for later layers to grab onto. The orange of the base canvas is very good for the sky. It's a very good complementary color for that. However, it is only an okay complementary color for the greener shades that are going to be present in the hero of our image. So all I'm trying to do with this is spread these paints gradually lower so that we are beginning to fill the canvas with the base color that I want. And I'll probably add more red on as I introduce more layers. Cool. So this is almost done, and it's meant to reflect these ridges that are really, really far in the background of our base image. And I'm going to take Van Dyke Brown, this shade. I'm going to put these where this first ridge isn't. Well, first of all, new layer. And just like that, made a decision and just went with it. And this is going to go even higher, like so. And I'm just kind of going through like so to give this line a little more shape. Now, on here, our light is shining on this side. So that means on this mountain, it needs to be kind of very similar, where the light is shining on the same side. So I am going to try to make it so that these do appear to have sides that are facing the sunlight. And on the other side, I want this to have this kind of lighter color here, like so. Again, I'm just trying to block in where I think the sun will shine versus where I think shadow will be. And again, this is still a pretty distant ridge, but on this ridge I want there to be a little more depth and value to it. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a darker shade of green this time, and I'm going to just add in a little bit. I think I went a little bit overboard on the last time, and I want this to be a bit lighter and greenness than the previous one. Again, now we're back in, and we are taking a smaller brush this time. We are blending. Now notice how we are automatically setting this in front. And I'm also trying to pull these colors both down and in as I create this ridge. And I'm beginning to become okay with having more obvious and apparent brushstrokes, because those will add to the texture of this ridge, and it will add to the appearance of this being something that's closer, and therefore something where we can see more detail. And now I am trying to be mindful of where I think the contours will be, and I'm essentially imagining that this ridge continues up into a little knob, but the higher area is off to the right-hand side here, which would be part of the Wiley range in real life. I think. On my world it is. And again, just looking to pull this down and pull this out, and looking to fill the canvas. And now, because I'm on, no, that's not lock at all. And now we should be able to also pick up and mix in some of these whiter colors. And again, I'm just trying to block this in a way that's very expressive, in a way that's capturing this mountain here in the background, and in a way that is giving us a feel of a slope that is falling away. And now notice I'm kind of creating a line going like this almost, and that is giving added texture in three-dimensional depth, because now we are seeing that this is actually, okay, cool, this is a bit of a valley. There's a bit of a way to kind of climb up that way too. And I'm kind of paying attention to the contours, paying attention to the lay of the land, and really creating something that has character and depth. Cool. Now, I am going to get a bit crazy, and I'm going to crank this opacity down to like our scene like 20% from before. I'm going to take this more orangey color, change my size to like that, go to my brush like so, and I am just going to paint in some sunlight right along here, just like that. Maybe shining through here a little bit too. And shining through here a little bit. It's kind of spreading out in this little valley here, but tucked behind that little ridge. Now as I blend this through and out, bigger brush, I have now created something that added a little bit extra touch of depth to it, and that added a little extra bit of appeal to it. In a moment, I am going to actually get even more crazy and more wild, because every light needs a shadow. And so what I'm going to do here is have these guys cast a shadow. That will further add more depth to what we're looking at here, and as I blend the shadow with the light, it'll begin to create some neat little effects for us. And let us kind of imagine these little areas where the light is trying to get through, but it can't quite get around these big hills. The lower I get in the image, the less concerned I am with the way this looks, because it'll likely get painted over. But I do want it to still have that same appearance, and I do want to still maintain the direction that I'm going, in case any of it does survive through to the end. And I want it to have and maintain the texture of the lay of the land that I established earlier. Now, I'm going to put a bright spot. No, I'm not going to do that. Cool, so now, that kind of takes care of the ridges that are in the background here. And what I want to do now is begin to paint in the notch. And the notch is going to run like this. So I'm going to I kind of really like what I've done here in this part, so I want this to shine through. So I'm going to have our notch be below that, and we're going to cut across here, I think, going up in the same direction here. And then I may also, we're kind of going to draw and kind of maintain this section of the painting as well. So I kind of need to form a shape that will blend into this area. So I've kind of already done a little bit. So So I may keep that. That could actually be there. Cool. So I think what I should be doing now is painting in our V shape or our U shape. And I'm going to create a layer to do that. I'm going to first take a dark red and I'm going to block in the entirety of, in a very big brush, I'm going to fill in the bottom of the painting. And this red is basically going to be our base color for the rest of that. And I'm going to try to blend this shape in to the best of my ability to really capture the fact that it's one landscape. Because now what we're doing is really setting this forward and really setting this to be something that's in the front of the image. And notice how I am only an hour and 17 minutes in, and I've already gone through most of the composition of this image. So now, again, we're going to blend. I'm going to unlock all the layers, because I want this to blend as much as possible. I'm going to increase my brush is actually pretty big already, and I'm just going to let the brush do some work here. As I, again, try to pay attention to the lay of the land. I'm going to try to keep my brush in the lower section. In fact, we're going to go even more nuts. And no, we're not going to do that. I was thinking about merging all the layers together, but I think that would likely be too much. And instead, what I'll do is just focus on the shape of the land, and then as I finish, I will make sure I blend everything together once I have color applied to this more reddish shape. And again, even though I'm early on, I want to be paying attention to the hue and shape of the land, and be paying attention to the contours that I have. So here I'm trying to move in a very upward angular motion, because I'm going to want to capture the fact that this is a very rocky cliff edge that goes up to, I forgot the name of the cliffs, Webster Cliffs. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to start, I think, in the valley floor with a darker shade of green, and I'm going to just begin to, that is the wrong brush, just going to begin to fill this in. I think here I'm going to have to mix in some lighter shades as well, and just block in as I climb up, block in as I climb up. Trying to leave myself space to add more color in a minute. For the cliff's face, I'm going to pick this kind of color here and block this in like so. And again, I'm letting myself have some distinction and some character. And then even darker shade of green on this side. Cool. Now, I'm going to take my blender brush And I'm just going to start to make this try to look more homogeneous and try to put more like one thing. I'll probably have to go back in and add some darker colors here to make this pop a little more, because it's kind of blending a bit too much in with what's behind it. It's not really being, oh, there we go, that's a lot better. It wasn't really sitting up enough for me, and it wasn't really giving me the distinction of a clear shape. I also want to, at some point, I'll go back in, I'll make these more cliffy shapes be a little more defined as well, make them pop a little more as well. Yeah, there we go. I kind of almost want this area to appear like a scar or a rock slide occurred at some point in the deep past, and to really make like a scar on the landscape, and really capture some visual interest, because I could easily imagine a large stream cutting down that ravine. I'm going to add in some more glaze colors at some point to blend in these two areas, and to help them kind of have a similar shape or a similar tone. And again, here I have to kind of be very mindful of creating a shape that's very jagged and distinct, so that it comes to the forefront. And I do still want you to have some interpretation up to your eye. I don't want to fill in all the details for you. I kind of want your eye to be drawn to this valley, be drawn back to that ridge, and really be drawn back into a wilderness. And to really imagine yourself kind of sitting on top of that mountain or sitting in this valley, just letting yourself be absorbed by the majesty of nature, the beauty of nature. And again, here what I'm trying to do is just draw that green color out, paying attention to the valley floor, and really accentuating the fact that we are looking out upon this valley, and like I almost want you to feel drawn toward the adventure of it. Cool. So that is that. I'm going to now add a layer on top. We're going to go back down to our lower opacity, probably a little bit higher than last time, maybe like 35%. And I'm going to take a orange. Well, first we're going to take this green, like this. We'll kind of do this sparingly, I think, in smaller brush size. And just paint in some green. And then I'm going to take some orange. And I'm going to let this come in here. I'm not going to put it on this side because the sun's not shining on that side. The sun's shining on this side. I want this to be the area that's glazed. And on this side instead, we're going to take our darker shade of green and fill this in as if it is deep in shadow. And as we contrast those two, we'll kind of have one side of the image be in light and the other side be in shadow. And we're going to blend those two out so that they add much more character to the image. And here we go. And again, I'm just kind of going to go through and blend this out so that we have that nice contrast, and this will also help to have that extra pop of detail, that extra pop of visual interest without having to break the bank in terms of work effort, because you kind of notice that I didn't really do much here. I just kind of plopped some color on and I just started to let it mix and let it do its own thing. And by doing so, I have in layers, and by doing it in stages, I have allowed the image to really pop in a way that even I probably didn't expect. Cool. Now I'm going to take another layer. This is going to be a little bit on that side of transparency. We'll go with our 69. Nice. And we'll add on some grays to this rock face. And I'm going to take a very small detail brush. And I just want to have some uneven striations here on the rock face itself. blender brush. Actually, we're going to use the rake. A little bigger than that. And now I'm trying to give the appearance this is a scar. And I'm trying to kind of give it a very concave look. And on this side, I really want to focus on downward motions. And I want there to be that sense of verticality, that your brain says, oh, there's no trees there, because that's a cliff. Like, I want that kind of vertical element to carry through. Back to that detail brush, a little bit different gray. Again, just all I'm going to do is take that and take the rake. And begin to pull it through. The rake that I'm using now is a flat brush, so it doesn't have that same ridge or texture to it, but it will still add striation without letting it pop, without having those same elements of ridged texture. Okay, cool. That looks a lot better. And I think, so the last thing I'll probably do is I think what I'm going to do is really begin to merge all this down. And when I do that, I'm also going to save it because I'm about to do something very bold. And now, what I'm going to do is take my blender brush, and it's at a very large size now, and I'm going to begin from this corner, and I'm just going to start cutting through the paint. I didn't click save. Always save your document first. Cool, and I'm just going to keep cutting through because I want there to be the appearance of a road that is cutting through this valley. And I'm going to take the darkest gray color that I have, and I'm going to take a flat brush of that that size, and I'm just going to try to follow this thing through, paying attention to where the contours are. I'm going to cut across like that, and I might even take this much smaller blend brush size and just try to blend it out. So it's kind of drifting out into the valley. And I'm trying to be very, very patient with this and be very, very detail oriented with this as I kind of pull the vegetation over the road and then clear the road underneath it. Giving it kind of that more rough texture versus something that is very bright and very clearly linear. I kind of want to make it look like I spent time on it rather than just kind of jammed a line there at the end. And actually, what I think I'm creating here, I don't think is necessarily a road. I think this could be a river. In the image, it is a road. It is US 302. But I think this could definitely have the makings of a nice little river that is just kind of winding its way through the valley, speeding up and slowing down as it does so. And I'm also trying to think about where other spots might be, where other little indications of water might be flowing through and creating the idea of this little water network at the floor of this valley. And I'm going to let it fill this bottom corner. And again, the idea is that this is going to draw your attention toward the center of the image here. And then from there, you're going to be drawn up the valley and into the sky. And I really want this central point here to be the focus of the image, or the hero. I guess what I'm kind of doing here is just blending this back and really just letting some of the colors interact a little bit more as I wrap up this painting, because I think it is pretty much done. I think all I have to do is sign it. going to take a very bright red. I'm going to take a very bright brush, and I'm just going to sign it down here. Oops. I'm not good at signing. I'm going to add a layer first. Jack down the opacity, and I'm going to very gently sign down there. Cool. I hope you enjoyed watching me create this. I hope this also either inspired you to get outside and enjoy nature, or to paint as well. Again, most of the tools I'm using here are free. Krita is free. Memory layout brushes are free. OBS is free. So feel free to enjoy yourself and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.